I'm here with the Aussie BIM Guru, Gavin Nicholls. Typically, we do once a year check up on what's going on in the industry for the end of the year. But there's so much stuff going on right now that we thought, why not do kind of a casual checkup? So I wanted to ask you, since we last talked in the last 6-7 months, AI has progressed a lot. How has it changed for you?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I guess the last time we spoke about AI, we were almost, I mean, we weren't skeptical of it, but it was at the phase where you couldn't necessarily depend on it for a lot of the time. It was really only just figuring out how to do code well, for example. And I mean, that is the space that AI has probably had the most impact on me. I mean, for a while, I used it here and there. I dabbled with it, but never really, just went all in and let it write my code for me. Lately, I've just had to pivot and just try, letting it write entire applications from the ground up for me. The other day, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, I recognized someone was having trouble with a PDF binder. 2 prompts later, we have a PDF binder, like just
You mean
PDF
like
binder.
replacing Acrobat?
Yeah, done. Like it, and if
Uh-huh.
that's what we want it to do, it has different features. Like it's pretty unreal just what you can spin out of not much. But I guess with that, my focus and a lot of people's focus in the space now has become on getting the best quality and context for your AI, so that it knows your systems, it knows your ways of working, what code you already have. So I've been playing around more with like the types of files and systems and sometimes skills that I can feed to it to get, I guess, a more tailored outcome, because a lot of people seem to just, press the I'm feeling lucky button, build a standalone piece of software that will never plug it into your full code ecosystem. So we're really starting to dabble with that. So where I work, we've hired, we already had one web developer, and now we have another one, and they both heavily specialize in AI, and how to, I guess, get the most out of it, how to use it, how to implement it at scale. So we're starting to explore effectively just like how this is going to transform certain parts of our business. Some of the applications we're building, I probably can't say too much about them, but one that I'm really pushing now is effectively going to let us like run automated Revit tasks at hot desks, of a lot of varieties of natures without users needing to be there. So we're looking at the idea of, like abstracting the interaction with Revit to like a web service, and they're just driving an actual, physical computer with, tasks and instructions. And there's no AI in that process currently, but like we've used AI to write that software that we're starting to see actual results from. So yeah, it's pretty unreal that, once you embrace it, there's obviously a lot of really quick wins and things you have to think about that come with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think in the last year, people were saying, well, it's okay to try and experiment a little bit, but the quality of the code isn't there. It's not good enough. So do you feel that has changed? And now the most recent model, whether it is Fable or Opus 5 or the newest OpenAI models, do you think they're good enough that you can let them go to task and the quality of the code is totally fine?
Yeah, I mean, I use Claude at the moment. We've experimented with a few other providers. We realized eventually you can call most of the models from each other anyway, so we're not like super locked into one or the other. So I'm not saying just use Claude, because you can call Claude models from Copilot and all sorts of other things. So I did definitely notice that something happened about maybe 3 or 4 months ago. There was like a flip that someone flicked a switch behind the scenes, and suddenly Claude seemed to get a lot better. It suddenly started, it seems to like it may not actually be doing it, but it seems like it's working agentically behind the scenes and handing off tasks to things and bringing them back and testing things. We noticed it seemed to be very rare to get errors in Claude output eventually, which was surprising, because originally we used to get like an output, we'd put it in and you'd get like 58 different errors. It couldn't compile. Basically, it was like, I can't run this code. It's not correct. And we might get one or two tiny errors now, like you just haven't referenced a particular library with its full namespace, so it doesn't know which one it is, something like that. But like the PDF binder I built, for example, that thing ran first time. But yeah, we noticed the quality definitely improved. And I think a lot of this comes down to what you give the AI to work with. So I did start feeding more samples, examples, started building some pretty standardized like markdowns for context, to just get like more consistent outcomes and put it, more on task, and no longer have to keep repeating myself saying, hey, I'm using Revit. Hey, I'm using C Sharp. Like I don't say that anymore. I just get to task with basically a script that I give it. But I think that made a difference as well. I wasn't really using AI very effectively, like say 3 or 4 months ago. Now I'm trying to actually, research what the best practices are. But I've noticed you can get more with less as well. So we probably don't have like an 8,000 word context file, for example, anymore. I think I have a 1,200 word, very concise summary, and then I have a set of examples that it can sort of navigate its way through if it needs to look at them. Yeah, we noticed the quality has definitely improved. And for reference, I currently use Sonnet. That's my preferred model. We
Oh, really? It's the latter one.
Yeah. People are surprised by that. A lot of people think Opus seems to be more suited to coding. I've actually found for some reason Sonnet just seems to gel with me. I get better outputs from it. It seems to wrap things up into like bundles and put a bow on it, whereas like Opus gives you like fragments of things. It's like, here's an idea, here's a concept. I'm like, I just want you to give me the whole project. Just hand the whole thing back to me and I want to hit run. And Sonnet seems pretty happy doing that. So as you can tell, I've got like a bit more into the space and I'm starting to really, I guess, embrace it in part of my workflow. How about yourself? How's your experience changed?
Yeah, so it's funny. I was watching the videos I made last year, which like vibe code a Python script and paste it as a Dynamo node or in the Python shell, and it seems almost laughable how much it's outdated. So I've been exploring, also teaching small local firms the use of Claude Code and the Revit MCP. To me, it's a really powerful setup, especially for people that are small teams who don't have the resource to have actual developers, right? And even for some of these teams, maybe a couple of people that kind of dabble a little bit in Dynamo. But when I showed them the workflow and a few examples and how they could generate their own quick extension in PyRevit, it was a few of them reached out after. They said, hey, it was kind of a big deal. We started automating a lot more stuff. So it's a more direct way to automation. I can see for the specific workflow is not ideal for everybody. Like some bigger firms probably want more control over the code and how it's handled. But I think for smaller firms, it's extremely powerful.
Definitely. Yeah, but we found, I guess, the difference with us with why we don't necessarily stick with the low code anymore is just dependency, managing dependencies and handling versions of subversions of versions of applications attached to your application. It gets quite heavy and hard when you've got lots of users eventually to maintain that landscape. But I think for like small to medium firms that can really very easily manage their tech stack because they've only got a few people they have to consult with internally to deal with it, it's definitely like a democratizer to some degree. I mean, saying AI as a democratizer is almost ironic given how undemocratically it's being manage to deploy it. But I guess for now, at least with subsidized models and access, it seems like it is an equalizer of sorts in access to capability. That is, I guess, what I've seen. But I do wonder as these companies push towards IPOs and all these things, how that's going to shift. But I guess it's hard to say right now, given that they're sort of teetering on the edge of IPO and they can't really seem to take the jump yet because their profits are all over the place.
It seems they're either on the edge of bankruptcy or being the most profitable companies, and like there's no in between. It's either one or the other.
Basically, just to bail out right before you go bankrupt anyway, right? It's just like, let's get all our superannuation buried in this company so that it doesn't go bankrupt.
I haven't played with any of them, but I think there's like these open source or open weight. Not to be clear, I don't know all the technical differences of these Chinese models that are. I think they're competing with Anthropic and OpenAI. I don't know all of what this means, but it's interesting.
The only confusion for me there is like, how are they trained, right? Like, because I mean, all these like OpenAI and all these companies, despite the fact that yes, they are, stealing a lot of probably intellectual property. I imagine I won't say they are because I don't want to get sued, but like if there's questionable motives over the sources, but I guess like some of these Chinese open weight models seem to have been trained on the output of these models. So it's like, are you dealing with like a secondhand, AI, hallucination? Sometimes it's like the weights of these models, people aren't quite sure if they've been legitimately trained or, trained through being trained by trainers. So it's it'll be interesting to see how that evolves, or if these models sort of hit a ceiling when, the AI models that are, first generation or first layer realize that they're training a second generation AI model and they stop and go, oh, I recognize the pattern here. I'm going to stop talking to you because you're an AI. I'm not going to train you how to be me.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to watch that sort of to and fro. I sort of enjoy the irony that the AI companies are being stolen from now as well. Like,
Yeah.
they're like, how does it feel? Like, like it's fun to watch that dynamic play out. And now, USA wants to ban, Chinese models because someone stole their IP. Boohoo! Like, it's fun to watch that socially play out.
It's quite ironic for sure. So something I've noticed in the industry as well, like so many people are building AI agents for Revit. It's something I can tell how many times someone sends me a message, try my new AI agent for Revit, my new app. And they're all basically doing the same thing, right? Which is extremely similar to the free, not except for subscribing to Claude, but the Revit MCP. So like, why would I subscribe to your system? I guess maybe some of them are good. I haven't tried them all. Maybe especially if they have something else to offer other than just type of prompt, and you have a new tool that has been added to Revit. If you launched that 5 years ago, it would be a killer app, but everyone's doing it now. So
yeah, I've sort of moved away from the idea of the MCP and the chatbot in terms of where we get value from currently. I feel like the chatbot output just hasn't been there. I think Pirate MCP is a nice exception because it says, okay, I've got something that works. Now slap it on a ribbon and it's there and you can use it now. And I think I've realized that I'm thankful that I guess I invested a lot of my time into automation. And if AI helps me build better automation, that's more what I'm interested in for now. Like having worked at, a very large company, I've come to realize that ultimately most users want something that's deterministic. It's going to do what it says it does.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't want to just spin something up and it takes a punt. Oh yeah, I did it. And you look at it and it didn't do it. Like that's immediately how you stop someone using your tools because they go, well, I can't trust this. It might delete something without telling me. Like I'm switching it off. So we've sort of taken a similar stance for now and said we want like better automation, better organizational data schemas so that when the AI is like really at the point where it's like hand over the reins, we've got a very clear schema for it to work with, where it's like, this is the table you go to for this. You could almost describe it in like a markdown to an AI saying, this is how you navigate our business effectively. And that's like a big focus for us where I work. I think a lot of companies are doing it right now. They're trying to build like the AI roadmap for the AI to follow so it can effectively automate tasks. But I think building good quality automation, scalable automation that is efficient, both on memory and time, is really important. So that's where I've really fallen back on. I still enjoy building like toolkits and tools and things and, distributing them to people so you can go, here's how it works, or give it to your AI and it can add it to your toolkit. So like, for example, I'm literally on a second screen right now, just working on a little mini project. I found a blog post from 2012 by Conrad Sobon on Archilab, and he showed you basically how to stop things from being deleted in Revit using a listener that just says like protect these elements at all costs. If they get deleted, tell the user no and go back. And I put it in my work systems because I was like, cool, we need that. But then I was like, well, I sort of just like took something from someone, so I'll give it back to everyone as well. So I'm like building a little mini add-in that does that. But I'm also realizing I'm giving people fodder for their AI to just read and work with too. So I'm enjoying the idea of building collateral that can still be sort of used and recycled and consumed by people that maybe aren't coders themselves, but would like to give it to the AI and say, here, read this and slap it onto my toolbar as well. So I'm enjoying that sort of modular sort of tooling approach.
Yeah, that's something I experimented with, and I didn't really understand the ethics aspect of it, because you can basically take a GitHub link, paste it into Claude Code, and say, hey, can you have a look at this? Assuming it's public and they have like MIT license, which means you can actually use them. Can you rebuild it and put it in my Pirate extension right now? I was like, sure, and it works. It's pretty. And then I'm like, well, should I put it like if I use something free, should I give it back? Yeah, I had these questions when building that. I guess if it's only for internal use, it's one thing.
Yeah,
That's it.
when you get to like Apache licenses and other types, it can get complicated. And I haven't really noticed AIs really care about the licensing very often when you show something to them, even if the license is included in what you're showing to them. I make most of my stuff MIT licensed just because ultimately I don't have time to maintain it anyway.
Yeah,
So if
yeah.
someone goes, and if they launch a business off the back of a thing I wrote, oh well, is what it is. I could have done it, but like I don't have the time right now. So I'm just like, here, have some cool free stuff, and it might break, it might work. I'm happy to keep it pretty free and open. I think there's even more free licenses than that. There's just like I think commercial commons and all sorts of other ways you can just say
Yeah.
like just have it. Like, and most of the stuff I build, I put out there just these days going, just have it. Like, like I'm not gonna anything that I build that is robust, I'm going to be doing at work. So that's naturally just going to be locked off as it is. But yeah, I'm enjoying that idea of building up little like toolkits and resources that, probably are just going to be, hacked by people into their own sort of tooling.
I feel that people that are, the saying was like, well, maybe we won't need programmers and developers anymore. I feel like it's actually quite that's not been true at all. I feel like it's actually a superpower that if you're a developer and you have all this experience, it's you get to work even faster. But since you understand all of it, all the concepts and the database and all of this stuff, it's so much easier to use AI, and then you can understand the results, what it gives you. So like on my end, I understand some part of it, but there are some instances I'm like, I wish I had more knowledge about this stuff so I could understand more what's actually going on. The first time I installed Claude Code and it was on the terminal, like, what the hell is going on? I don't understand any of it. So I just used the desktop version instead, which was less intimidating for someone like me.
And we need people that think in systems and can design
Yes.
things and think things up, and also see the risks with them, see the challenges you're going to face. And because you can't just tell an AI to figure out all the challenges for you, you have to see them sort of coming and go, oh, have you thought about this? Is this going to be a problem? Oh yeah, it is. We probably shouldn't develop this way now because you've just told me this. So I've definitely found that organizations are still looking for coders because coders are programmers. Like, where there's not really like a programmer that's not a coder yet mentally in this industry. I find usually it sort of comes with a turf, but I think we will see more people who've come from like more the vibe coding background, but still, learned how to program per se and think about systems and algorithms, and probably learn about them too through curiosity. Like you're finding, you're getting more curious about the code, even if you didn't necessarily, come in as a coder to the space.
I think people are hiring. So my theory about this is that more people want to code stuff and more people want to build applications because maybe they vibe coded something, but they realize they need help and people who know what they're doing to actually get it out there. So in general, it feels like there's more people that want to build apps. So I've heard somewhere the Jevons paradox is when you increase. Anyway, when you think you increase like how easy it is to make code, so it's going to make the coders go away. But the paradox is there's actually more coders needed because people want to do more of it. Like you increase supply and you also increase demand at the same time.
Yeah, it's also that everyone uses the word way too much in programming, and I don't like using it. But abstraction, like we're getting more and more abstract in how we code. So I guess you're just adding more layers between the poor computer down the bottom that's just trying to compute ones and zeros, and we're just chucking another layer on top, another layer, and eventually it's like the maintenance pipeline to get back to the core of that is like so intense. We're already at the point where like the abstraction is so heavy on computing. Like you take Dynamo, for example, that's already like, a couple of layers away from Revit in C++, and, it's got the API, it's got Dynamo itself. It's closer than a lot of other approaches, but like probably not the best example, but at least when you know how Dynamo works behind the scenes, which I do now. But you're still like a long way away from raw computing, and a lot of the really strong programmers out there are working with pretty raw computing still, like memory management and pointers and heavy concepts. I mean, like if you go back and look at some of the source code from video games that are getting released from like the 2000s now, which is starting to become a thing, that they're working in incredibly raw mathematical ways because they have to be efficient and fast, and engines have to be quick when you're dealing with graphics, for example. And I think you can't get too far away from that core if performance matters. And I think like obviously performance in a lot of industries is still a very, very big thing, the software. So it's interesting to watch how far we can get away from that before we get like too far, or before we need the hardcore programmers to come back in and sort of help us and, build, real applications like Enscape, for example. That thing must be pretty raw. in the problems it's solving at the graphics level.
Yeah, for example, right now we're working on a new app, basically an LMS for BIM Pure courses that's fully custom. And I tried vibe coding some stuff, but it was basically a prototype. But then I was too scared to actually use that as kind of the real version. So I'm working with a programmer and working more as a product manager. But what's fun is I can use Claude Code to ask questions about the code. Hey, tell me about how is that set up? So I get to learn a little bit about it, but then also build secure code. Because if you're working with a developer that also uses AI, it's still going really fast. Actually, maybe even faster than if you're trying to do it yourself, if you don't have a lot of experience.
I guess also, like, you sort of still need developers, because the AI is never going to completely understand your project as well as you do. It's only going to understand what you give it or show it or tell it to focus on. And like, the more stuff you give AI, the less likely it's going to understand the small part of the problem you want to deal with, but you need it to sort of appreciate everything outside the problem to understand the context of the problem. If it's
especially the larger projects, if it gets too big, it cannot really understand every single piece, right? Or it would take a lot of time.
So I think developers are still really useful to mentally glue like your applications, your projects, your company together, because AI is never going to have that complete context unless you want to burn like $1 million a day just reminding your company everything that's in the company every day, which, you know, is insane. Like, you don't want to have to wait for your whole companies to be headed on a piece of context every time you make a query. So that's, I think, a very important thing that we see. You can obviously build tools that abstract parts of your business away and say, you don't need to understand this part of the business right now, but if you do, here's the files to go and consume.
Yeah.
You can build that type of approach, and we are experimenting with that. But I think at some point, the brain is still, like, obviously just so much more powerful than a computer we can hold.
Yeah, for some aspects, for sure. Like, to me, it's unbelievable how AI is so good at coding, at least from my point of view. But then, like, for writing text, like, for me, it still doesn't work. Like, I've tried it. I've tried creating scales, like for my voice and the BIM Pure voice. It doesn't work. So I still write all my posts, all my emails by myself, because I don't like the way AI works. And I think from an ethical point of view, I don't like it. When I know I'm reading AI text, I stop reading because it's not fun. So that's still the part that's I'm keeping mostly human. Maybe some like technical aspects or summaries or this kind of stuff is fine. But if I'm writing a text and it's as if I'm speaking, I'll still write it, or maybe do some very light editing.
Yeah. I actually dictate a lot of what I write now. Often do text to speech, and that, I think, gives it that authentic layer. I think people know subconsciously when they're reading things that are somewhat AI generated. Like, people say you can't tell. I'm like, no, you can, and it's
I've read somewhere that the more you use AI, the easier it is for you to like spot immediately when. But I think not everyone is using AI this much. I guess we're both power users, but I know people use it maybe a little bit, maybe like Google search, basically. But
some people don't even care about it. I mean, like, a lot of people I talk to outside our industry are just like, I don't know, I tried ChatGPT once. That's it. That's their whole experience.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the developers like forget that, you know, we are at the end of the day dealing with people that really don't want to get too deep into technology, and, you know, that they're happy for, you know, Apple to wrap it up with a bow in 10, 20 years and call it a day. And like, we'll take the AI or whatever it's called when it's finished. They don't really want to play and experiment. And I get that. I mean, like, I know people that, you know, are really obsessed with baking and making food and stuff. And I'm a terrible cook. So to me, like, their AI is like, you know, food. Like, it's like, so I definitely say that, you know, it can be very easy to get lost in the space and think that everyone's obsessed with this thing. And, you know, it's going to change everything, and it's like, it's not going to change everything. There's still a lot of other important things in the world that technology doesn't touch, and shouldn't touch, I should say.
Thanks to Pirros for sponsoring this BIM Pure video. Pirros is a web application and Revit plugin to help you manage your details and other content. All your content lives on the cloud and can easily be brought to your Revit projects. You can upload entire projects and select what kind of elements to import. Pirros will automatically create a list of similar details that have been used in other projects. Users can also annotate details and tag teammates with specific instructions. Then create a stash of several details or sheets and load them all at once inside of Revit. It's also possible to activate sync mode and get notified if certain typical details have been modified. In addition to details, Pirros also lets you manage Revit families, including both system and loadable families. Search uses AI image recognition to identify families, so even if your tags and naming conventions are not perfect, you will still find what you're looking for. Learn more at Pirros.com. So how do you think that's going to affect software in the industry? It feels like there are some plugin companies, not all of them, but a few of them, like, I'm not sure like how sustainable that is, like for in the next 5 years. Like I also see some of them that's like they have something really solid that they can offer beyond just automation or the basic Revit automation. But some of them I'm like, I'm not so sure about that.
I guess like you look at like Enscape, for example, it's a good example of a business that isn't just like shackled to, Revit necessarily. And it's sort of it's a very unique product. Like no one's really tried to create it exactly as it is. Whereas you go and look at like, I'll just name some names, bugger it. Ideate, D-Roots, some of those companies where they've been heavily focused on Revit automation, their unique selling pitch is not as convincing anymore, right? It's like they're still, making very high quality products, very refined products, but
yeah, I think if it's not too expensive, if it's the price is reasonable, it's still a good deal, right? If you create your own tools, you still have to test them.
Some of them, you're like, I don't know, the price is looking a bit harder to sell on
yeah,
paper.
Sure.
I can go and buy something and $1,000 for something that costs $20,000 a year. It's like that's that's a tough bill. And like honestly, a couple of those add-in companies we've more or less phased out where I work because I've just built them out internally, and some of them, those things seem small, but then you go, actually some of these are like like $90,000 a year for how many years, who knows. That they become pretty easy to sell on paper, and also once you realize that you can build a sort of a dodgier version of them that still gets the job done. Like it doesn't need to have the perfect interface, because they often sell that as they're polished. They're like, oh, it's very polished. It does exactly what it says it's going to do. It's got all these tables and everything. I'm like, you just need a progress bar. Like, that's fine. Like, we don't need to know exactly what happened in the process. So like some of those really heavy, like Gucci add-ins, we've sort of said, we can accept like the H&M version of, of the toolbar, and it gets the job done just as well. So it's been interesting to challenge that. And AI, now makes it that you don't have to be a coder to challenge those sorts of products anymore. So I do feel for them. I think they've built up some pretty heavy and high towers, and it's going to take a while to come down from some of those towers, I imagine, to figure out what those products become. But there are definitely still a lot of unique products out there that, are going to be difficult to deal with, because they're either, just so robust and fast and performant, or they're just doing something that's not actually something you can just ask an AI to build. Like you can't ask an AI to build your graphics engine. You can, but it won't do it. Like it will make something like a crappy little web browser where a cube spins around in 3D and that's all it does. Like I remember you built like a SketchUp. I remember.
That was one of my tests, just for fun, like to see if it could actually work.
It sort of did though. It had like push pull and everything, which is pretty cool. But I guess it was drawing upon a lot of other like third party like libraries and things, I imagine, behind the scenes that those companies probably aren't legally allowed to do. They've got to build their own.
Yeah.
I guess automation is a hard one because people often think, it's going to take my job. But we're just trying to revisit the concept of like, what is architecture? What is an architect? What does an architect do? I think this is a really interesting area that's going to come up in our industry more in the future, where not only with AI challenging, means of production, but also, I guess, just, the race to the bottom, all these phenomenons that are really challenging our industry at the structural level. A lot of firms are going to have to really revisit, redefine what they do, what type of firm they are. But we're seeing the industry get more and more competitive. There's still a lot of work out there, but it's heavily competitive. There's a lot of international competitors jumping into each other's markets, and it's interesting to watch watch the industry really heat up in competition. I think a lot of firms are starting to look in the mirror and go, who are we? Like, what do we do? What do we tell the client when they ask us that question? So I think that's something I'm going to enjoy sort of exploring where I work. We already do on a daily basis, but really heavily transforming service. Like what do we do for a client? Are we selling an experience? Are we delivering a building? Like, are we doing both? We're hopefully doing both, but it's like, where's the balance? Like, when do you deliver experience and when do you deliver drawings? And I think if we can challenge the idea of delivering drawings as well, that's going to be a really big thing for our industry. coming up, because we're seeing a lot of products that don't really try to deliver drawings. They try to deliver experiences and answers and, insights. And I think that's an opportunity for our industry to start to push back on the idea that we shouldn't just be drawing and documenting all the time, right?
Do you mean like model BIM as a deliverable for construction?
To some degree. More like, is sometimes a picture like more convincing than, a 3,000 page PDF binder. Like ultimately, like, what are you trying to achieve at each point of a project, I guess, is what we need to ask ourselves. Are we trying to convince a project manager? Are we trying to convince a client? Or are we just trying to get this thing through like council, for example? And if it's going through council, sure, smash out a set of drawings. But like, how good does that drawing set need to be? How complete does it need to be? These are the types of questions I think our industry is going to be confronted with in the future, because at the moment we're overproducing as an industry. We're producing way too many deliverables, way too many drawings. We're doing like the shotgun blast approach, de-risk the whole project, show all the information that's possible at like 30% design development, which is insane because it's 30%. So why are we showing 100% of the information? So we're going to have to see that really, take a bit of a pivot, I think. And once we've done that, I think like there'll be more opportunity for technology in our industry, and we're not just like shackled to, Revit, ArchiCAD, those types of platforms. And, people will feel more comfortable trying out more tools that do more creative things. And I think like that's where I'm keen to see our industry move in the future. So yeah, it's a bit of a spicy take, but yeah.
I don't know where we're going with the whole BIM 2.0 and the future of Revit or BIM modeling apps, to be honest. Like this whole AI thing, it seems to be shaking things up, but it also seems that Autodesk is just kind of laughing competitors off. Like they're not really being challenged much.
Yeah. And they've got a very robust piece of software. I mean, we're not going to lie, right? It's not like Revit's a bad program or anything, and it's not like they're not listening to people, and they do have a community. Like it's not like they're not evil or anything like that. It's just we've all found ourselves sort of tied to this, pretty monolithic piece of tech that we customize it, we do things to it. I like to say that I'm polishing the prison bars from the outside. That's usually how I describe my role. Like to turn around and go work at Amazon or something like that. But I'm still hanging around polishing the bars for everyone, make sure they look nice. But I think it's a good piece of tech, and there are some exciting things on the Autodesk roadmap that I am genuinely intrigued to see how they go. There's some interesting things in the preview beta if people haven't signed up to that. I can't say anything about it obviously, but there's some good looking features in there too. So like I think Autodesk has to some degree listened a little bit over the years, and I think like I do feel a bit more engagement from them. But at the same time, I guess like variety is the spice of life. I'd love to see more projects jump into Unreal Engine in concept phase, for example, and just really build an experience for a client and not just build a set of drawings, because clients don't usually actually understand drawings that well. In my experience, they actually prefer 3D space, most of them, at least these days. So like I'd be keen to see more clients that are willing to sort of engage with that and not just be aiming for a council approval from day one. That's the type of dynamic I sort of think we need to push our industry to explore more.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you think about Forma? I mean, as annoyed as I've been with the name change for all sort of reasons, but I guess it kind of makes sense also in a way. Like Forma is the name of our cloud and all cloud apps for the AEC ecosystem. Although I had some courses in the content that I've worked the ACC name, and I had to update them all. So that was really annoying.
It's hard to keep up, isn't it? I mean, it's Forma, or it's formerly Forma. That's how I describe Forma site design, formerly Forma.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess like it's sort of the same thing with a different name attached to it. Like ACC to me is trying to sort of move into the AConnect space to some degree and start to offer that experience. We haven't seen too many clients in the industry willing to just throw themselves into this new thing, because to them it's still very new. Like they're not really that familiar with ACC. ACC to them, so Forma, ACC, whatever, has basically been like for the design team, for the contractors, but not for the client. So I think that's the pivot that Autodesk is going to have to convince, I guess, clients to take in order for it to become like a fully realized project management solution. I think it's probably capable at this point. We've done a lot of testing with it at work. We've played with the correspondence modules, played with APS and the APIs to figure out what you can do with it, and it's pretty flexible at this point. I think like it could work as a like a whole project management solution if you wanted it to. But I guess the question is like, is there data lock-ins that clients aren't willing to take? Is there licensing challenges? The clients have to suddenly have their own licenses they bring to the table. They're probably going to be using Aconex and Forma at the same time to do the switch if they do it. So it's like you've got to wear extra cost for a while just to make a pivot because you can't just pull out overnight. So they're the types of questions and challenges I think that are going to surround Forma as a platform. I like what they're doing with their APIs, with APS. They're trying to unify a lot of their schemas and make it consistent, which is not something I guess we've experienced in the past with Autodesk, or their products sort of are their own islands. But they are at least trying to figure out how to create bridges that are pretty standardized between them in the web. So I see the vision, I see what they're doing, and I think it's the right choice where they're going at the moment. But at the same time too, I'll be interested to see like how other products and offerings sort of compete or build alternative pathways for other companies. One thing I do think is challenging in our industry is a lot of small businesses are sort of forced into using Revit just through competition. It will be good to see platforms that really free up the small to medium scale firms from needing to do that. Because I think ultimately like running a program like Revit in a 20 to 30 person firm is very difficult. The systems, the standards, just to keep up with, the software itself is very different to working at like a 2,000 person firm, where you might have a 20 person digital technology team and you may have no one at like a 20 to 30 person firm. So I'll be interested to watch if there's, really feasible platforms for the little guy, I guess, as we'd say, in our industry, that aren't just like SketchUp and, just lesser offerings than
Revit LT.
yeah, Revit LT. Yeah, I forget if they discontinued it or they changed.
No, it still exists. Yeah,
still there. Yeah, they changed something about it. I forget what it was. They either took a feature out or they changed some sort of part of it. But because I don't hear it mentioned anymore, it might just be the pricing that became a little bit, too close to the full price to justify it on paper. But I mean, not having add-ins these days in Revit, that would be such a killer, no matter what scale of firm you're at. LTO is no add-ins, so it's pretty big.
Yeah, that's kind of a rough one, even just for renderings, like connecting to Enscape or D5 or something else. If you cannot do it easily, I guess you can always export, but it's kind of a pain. So something else that's maybe a bit controversial is what you think of the future of Dynamo. So I've been a long time fan of Dynamo. Recently, I've got to admit, my reflex when I have something to automate is let's try it up in AI, right? It's not let's open Dynamo and start placing nodes. So I'm like, when I'm teaching new firms, should I propose to still teach Dynamo? Like, I mean, it's going to take longer. Like you might argue there's still advantage because you learn the structure, but it's kind of a side quest, right? Because firms, they're busy and they want to automate stuff. So I know you had pro Dynamo views, you were still optimistic, but I've seen, for example, Ian, the creator of Dynamo, said, I'm not sure if it's still relevant or not, but you seem to be long on Dynamo.
It depends. I still use it a lot for prototyping, for spinning up quick solutions. If I'm ever dealing with geometry, I'm not doing it in the Revit API. Like, not going to happen. Like, working with geometry in the Revit API is like...
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, for sure. Me too. If something I have to modify geometry, that's one case where that might be good.
Especially if I'm just toying with a concept and I'm like, I want to understand geometrically if my algorithm works how I think it works in my head. Like, I use it a lot for that. If I have to give a solution to someone really quickly, like I need this and I need it like by 3 o'clock, I'm not going to spin up a Revit add-in by 3 o'clock and deploy it to their computer and sign all the DLLs. And, that's not going to happen. So like, I use it a lot for very quick, I need this right now sort of things. I'm building my package at the moment in C# just because I need a toolkit that is like basically what I do in C# that I can use in Dynamo, because Python has just become a little bit too undependable for me. It's got too many it works, but sort of scenarios where it's like, I've hit the fringe case or this engine's not loaded in. I'm like, nah, forget about it. I'm going to C#. So like, I've sort of built that selfishly to use it in my day-to-day work, because I will use it and I will need it for my own personal scripting. But also just, I think it's important that we sort of recognize the fundamentals that we're always building upon. And even if it's our AI learning from it, it's very valuable to still be able to see the source and understand what's happening below the hood. I don't usually like using packages and things where I can't see like what's happening inside the thing I'm using. I prefer to understand the core. That way, if I need to break away from the dependency, I can do it. And also, if I only care about a very small part of a dependency, it's much easier to just go, oh, I just need this little part. I don't need to deploy this whole thing around the company now. So Dynamo itself, I guess to me, like it's how I got into programming. So it's hard for me to discredit it because I can't imagine if I got into code these days what my journey would look like. I might say just go talk to an AI, but in that process, you sort of limit your extent because how do you learn the fundamentals at that point? So I think it's still the best way to at least learn abstractly about the Revit API and how it works. And I think in that, you'll learn how to talk to AI in a more direct way that is actually in like API specific terms. Because I've seen people describe tasks to like AI before for Revit, and it's not even close to the way that the API works. Like they'll use terminology where I'm like, that means something completely different in the API. And I can see where the AI gets tripped up and goes, oh, I think you're trying to like do a filter or something like that, because they're talking about filtering. They want to, reduce a set of elements down, but they don't talk about collecting or elements. So you sort of miss like really key, I guess, signposts that an AI needs. So I think that's like one really important function. I know that the Dynamo team is building MCP and AI for Dynamo. So that might sort of keep it going for quite a while if they can get it right. But yeah, I just can't imagine not having it on hand, I guess, even right now. Because I do spin it up quite frequently and just hand it off to people. And, yeah.
Yeah, I do see what you mean. It's true. Like I did learn about the Revit API through using Dynamo, and now even when talking to AI, I kind of have a sequence in my head, almost kind of a bunch of Dynamo nodes. It's just I type it out, like do the steps and then this step and then this step. Especially if it's a really simple task, you just do this task. But if it's more complex, I wanted to have a specific sequence in my head, and that's probably due to Dynamo. But at the same time, I'm thinking when I'm teaching to busy firms, I'm not sure the argument that it's the best way for them to learn the Revit API is gonna. I'm not sure they're gonna buy it, right? They're gonna just tell me what's the fastest way to get it done.
Depends, I guess. I mean, it depends what they're trying to do. I mean, if they want to build a scalable toolkit that they can eventually own, Dynamo's probably still like not too bad. You might need to like say these are the packages you need to expand on its capabilities. Every couple of years, the consultant's gonna have to drop in and refresh your scripts to make sure they work in the versions you're using. But I feel like saying, just go talk to an AI, spin out some stuff and hit play is like not necessarily going to always work for a small company, because they'll build themselves into pretty quick and heavy corners to get out of if they want to build like a scalable infrastructure. Most companies don't need to right now, but like if they want to start competing at scale, they may need like a more robust sort of like say deployment cycles, for example. How do you even get your plugin out to the company? Like little things like that seem small, but like there's still friction that Dynamo does remove. Like building installers and all that stuff. You can automate a lot of it these days, sometimes using AI, sometimes just using good code development principles, but they're not going to have that. Let's be real. Like they're not going to have even GitHub probably. Like they're not going to be distributing code in a standardized way. So it's like, it's whether, they want to go all the way up to well-deployed solutions or just hit a button, it works. I made a PDF binder, it works, like that sort of logic. Or do they want like a really robust toolkit that works with their business data and, draws upon web endpoints and all those sorts of things. So, but these are the sorts of questions that businesses have to ask themselves first before they, come to people like us and come to consultants. And, ideally you have some idea of what you want to do, how you want to do it. But I mean, consultants can guide you obviously, but, they're always going to come with their own biases, and some of them probably just hate Dynamo or hate add-ins or, so you naturally get limited by the way that, your consultants work as well. So, as you know, it's a challenge to, keep those biases out of our consulting processes. But
yeah, for sure. All right. I think it's going to be it for today. A lot to cover. I guess we'll finish it up at the end of the year.
Yeah, I guess if anyone's curious and what I'm up to as well, just drop by my GitHub. So I don't really do YouTube these days. I might come back eventually, but I'm pretty active on my Git. I've got a few active projects right now that you can watch me code in the open. So I'm building a new Dynamo package called Pickles, which will be like a C# package. Everything that my Python package does will be in Pickles and C# and more, and it will be way better, way faster, way less buggy. I'm also developing at the moment just like a few small little add-ins. I've put an add-in template on my GitHub as well. So if you're curious in that space, that'll also be like something that might help you as well in C#. But yeah, I look forward to keeping tabs on what you're up to, Nicholas. And I guess we'll probably do our Christmas catch up.
For sure, yeah. There's a lot going on, so we'll have plenty to talk about. If the next 6 months have as much happening as the last 6, we shouldn't miss topics. All right, thank you so much, Gavin.
Great. Thank you, Nicholas. Yeah.